Hi everyone, I'm Jane, and today we're gonna paint this super simple, super fast cityscape with Bokeh Lights. Make sure you check out the video description below for a full list of materials, and let's get started. Okay, now to start, I've already covered this canvas in about 2 layers of Cobalt Blue. It's not a color that I use very often, but I felt like Phthalo Blue was too dark, and it was gonna make the buildings blend too much into the background. If I added white, then it would brighten the phthalo blue to the point where I felt like it would look more like a daytime sky. So I used Cobalt Blue. I have this little piece of chalk, and I'm gonna sketch out my buildings pretty much like the image that I'm using for reference. And I got this off of a royalty-free image website, and there's a link in the description below where you can download the image as well. I'm just using that image as a general guideline for my buildings, and I may make it just a little bit different here and there. So just sketching in some rough ideas of where these buildings are gonna go. And I can even change it as I start painting it in if I end up not liking something. So we're just gonna go really simple here. And I'm using my 1/2" angle brush. Now, the fact that it's an angle brush doesn't matter. I'm using it because it's fairly soft and I like the 1/2" size. If you have a flat brush that's pretty soft and about a 1/2", I would say you're fine to use that. I don't have a 1/2" that's nice and soft that I like, so I'm just gonna use my angle brush. Now I have some matte medium and a little bit of black paint. And I know I'm gonna get lots of questions asking if you can do this without the matte medium. And I'm gonna say, to get the transparent look, you really can't. Technically, if you use extra water, you can thin down the black paint to get that look. But what's gonna happen is, after it dries, if you go to varnish it, you're gonna smear that paint. It doesn't matter how long you let it dry. So I loaded it up with matte medium. I've got quite a bit on my brush here. And I'm just gonna pull out a little bit of black paint, not a ton. I'm gonna come in here and start at the top edge of my building and just bring that straight down. Notice I'm not trying to get a nice clean edge. I'm just getting the idea of where the top of that building is. I'm just gonna wipe off the black off of the one side, pick up some more medium, and then I'm gonna put my brush half on and half off of that line and just smooth it over. Just wipe away that little ridge there. And pick up some more black, take it down the side here. Wipe that off again, more medium, half on and half off of that line, and just fuzz it out. Now, talking about thinning your paint out too much, I use a paper towel to wipe off some of that extra black. A few years ago, before I knew any better, I did a painting where I had lots of drips and runs of black paint, and then I never got around to varnishing it. A couple years later, I varnished it, and all of that paint smeared all over the canvas. And it had been on there for a couple of years. So don't think that, that I'm just telling you not to thin out your paint so that you have to buy a different medium. If you want the transparent look, you really have to use a medium. Wipe that extra off, a little more medium, and smooth out that top line. That's going to help make these buildings seem distant if they don't have a solid line at the top. Okay, now we have those edges nice and soft. I'm gonna pick up more black. There's still a little medium in here. And I'm just gonna start slashing it through here. Even inside of these buildings, you don't have to fill them in completely solid. If you can see some of the blue through it, that's okay, because that might just insinuate that the sky is reflecting off of a shiny surface on the building. So I'm picking up a little bit of my matte medium just to help get a smooth coverage. Don't take it all the way to the bottom just yet. We'll worry about that in a minute. Up here, I'm using super light pressure so I don't get a hard line now. If you use too firm of a brush here, you're going to have a hard time getting rid of those solid lines. At the bottom here, see how much medium I picked up? I'm just going to streak across the bottom here. And what that's going to do is kind of tell us this is where the ground is, but the medium makes the black spread really smoothly, and even though the blue is dry, it's almost going to look like the black is blending in with it. We're not going to do too much with the ground here. We're just going to insinuate that it's there. If you look at the reference photo that I'm using, you can't even really see any ground in there. There's just a little bit of a blue reflection at the bottom. Let's get just a little bit more black and fill in some of these holes where we've got some of the blue. I don't need to fill in all of them. I'm just going to darken a few spots in the buildings. Now I'm just going to take the black that's on my brush with some medium and insinuate maybe there's some other buildings in the distance here. See how transparent and thin that is? We'll just kind of go like that a bit, with super light pressure, a little extra medium just to make sure there's no hard lines. Lay down a little bit more black in there. Okay, I'm going to let this dry. We'll come back and start doing our bokeh lights. All right, so now I have a variety of colors on here, and it doesn't matter what colors you use. Think about what colors you see in the city where you live, or just whatever colors you want to see and use those. Now, in the video description below, I did list out all of the colors that I am using though. And I'm using this rather large filbert brush. I wet it in my jar just a little bit and wiped it off really well. And I'm loading up pretty heavily with matte medium. Now you can do this part without the matte medium, but your lights will be much more solid. You won't get transparency in them. So I'm gonna start with, I think, some of the lighter colors. So I'm gonna come into my white and just pull out a little bit of white. I'm not mixing a ton of white paint into here. And what I'm gonna do is kind of spiral my brush. But you can use any kind of brush, or even, like I said in the Blue Christmas video, you can use those little sponge daubers if you like. So I'm gonna come in here and press my brush flat and just kind of spiral it around. And add a few here and there, just to kind of get a base where the majority of my lights are gonna sit. Don't worry about overlapping them right now, because if you try and overlap while the paint is still wet, you'll just smear it together. Now, I didn't pick up more paint, I'm just getting more medium. And you'll see me do that a lot, where I'll start with some paint, and then after that I'll just get more medium. And every time I pick up more medium and less paint, the Bokeh Lights that I get are gonna be more and more transparent. And kind of like in my image, I'm gonna concentrate them mostly to this lower area. I may do a few higher up, but for the most part, we're gonna keep them pretty low. But you can add them absolutely wherever you want. I'm just going for kind of a simple image today. Now, it can be hard to tell how much white is in your paint here because the matte medium is so white when it's wet. But as these dry, these are all going to get much more transparent. And you can control the size of the lights you get by how much pressure you put on your brush. If you don't put a ton of pressure on, you'll get a smaller circle. If you put a lot of pressure, you're going to get a bigger one. Like here, I'm going to put quite a bit of pressure on, and I can get a much larger circle. I'm going to come into my unbleached titanium and just grab a tiny bit of that. And maybe I'll go a little bit more intense with the color there. Don't be afraid to let these lights overlap. That's what's going to make it super interesting. If you keep them all separate, then it's just going to look like a few polka dots. But if you let them overlap, it's going to be really interesting to look at. I'm going to grab some yellow actually now. Maybe a tiny bit of white. And matte medium. I'm just taking a little bit of a cue of where these colors are in my image that I'm using for reference, but I'm not trying to copy it exactly. Let's really wipe off quite a bit of that. And just pick up medium. We're gonna make a super transparent one. Maybe right up in here. Oh, got a little blob in there. If you end up with something you don't like on one of your lights, that's okay, just leave it, because you can come back later and put another light over top of it. I'm gonna grab a bit of this Naphthol Crimson. I really like using this Naphthol Crimson, especially against the bright blue cobalt, because it really gives quite the contrast and makes that crimson really pop. Okay, I cleaned off my brush, dry it off on my paper towel, and let's add a little bit of blue in there. So I got a tiny bit of titanium white, mix it in with my cobalt. And some medium. I know at this point, you might be looking at your painting thinking, well, this just looks like boring polka dots. But once we really start amping up the brightness in some of these, it's really going to push these ones to the distance and get some brighter ones that seem like they're much closer. In fact, let's go ahead and do that now. I cleaned off my brush, wiped it off on a paper towel. I'm loading up with just white. I might grab just a hint of the medium. And I'm going to come in here and add some bright white ones. Maybe I'll grab just a hint of that unbleached titanium. I'm going to keep the majority of my bright white ones toward the center. I'm not going to really get any of those toward the edge here. Get a little spot that got out of control, just put another light over it. Now I'm just picking up medium, and I'll get a few that aren't quite as intense. We'll build a little bit more down here toward the bottom. But put these wherever you want them. They can go absolutely anywhere. They can even go in the sky. They don't have to be attached to a building. Let's get some bright yellow. Still got the white on my brush, but I'm just picking up yellow. And because yellow is already so transparent, you don't really need any matte medium. I might grab a little bit just because it helps the paint flow a bit better. Ooh, and let's mix a bit of that naphthol in there. So this is kind of an abstract city painting. You know, bokeh is a really fun photography technique where you let the camera kind of blur out a little bit and expand the lights. And if I could take photographs, I am not a photographer. I cannot take a decent photo. But if I were a photographer, I would probably do bokeh lights constantly. That would probably be about the only thing I've ever photographed. Okay, I have a lot of colors going on in here. I'm gonna dry this and then come back and we're gonna keep going with some of the bright spots, but I don't wanna take the chance of dragging any of these colors in. Just keep layering until you like what you see. Stand back every once in a while and look at it. That'll help you know when you've got enough, where you need another one, where you maybe want to add some more colors. And if you like, you can even use different size of brushes. Get some different sizes of the lights going on. Make that just a slightly more transparent color and put it over there because I didn't really like the edge of that one light. I'm gonna dry it again real quick. And I think I am gonna go down to a smaller filbert brush. This one's about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just picking up some red. And maybe we'll insinuate there's a stoplight coming up back here. So I'm gonna make a little circle there. And another one right next to it, same size. And here's a hint, if you want to do green lights, phthalo green with some white makes, I think, the perfect color for green light. So I'm going to mix up some of that. And I'm not using any medium really with these smaller dots because I want them to be pretty solid colored. And we'll put a green dot here. Maybe there's a walk sign or an open sign for a business, something going on over there. I'm just going to add a few of these smaller circles here and there in different colors. And maybe some smaller ones in solid white. I'll do some over here. Maybe two that are right next to each other, and it can kind of insinuate maybe car headlights coming toward us. I'm going to take this teeny tiny filbert. You could even use a round brush. Load up with my Naphthol, and maybe we'll give a couple little lights up here. Sometimes these super tall buildings will have a little bright light at the very top. And maybe even a smaller white light here. I'm gonna make a couple of these transparent. Some of these little smaller ones. Oh, it picked up a little yellow there. That's all right. Maybe I'll pick up a little more on purpose. Go over that one again. I actually think I like that. So we are going to sign it and call it done. And there's your cityscape at night. I hope you enjoyed painting this with me and learning about how you can use matte medium to not only make the bokeh lights, but to fuzz out background elements for a full bokeh effect. This would be a really fun painting to do in a triptych with different size and shapes of canvases. And for those of you who don't know, a triptych is a set of 3 paintings that go together. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you subscribe. You can do so by clicking here. If you'd like to keep painting with me today, check out these 2 videos that I've chosen just for you. Thank you as always for painting with me, everyone, and I'll see you next time.